Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. I am your host, John. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. We are live usually at those four locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch our next live show on Thursday, September 8th. That'll be this coming week. If you would like to catch video replays of the show, go to our YouTube channel or the CMS Network YouTube channel. And while you are there, do not forget to click those like and subscribe buttons so that you are notified every time we go live, especially for special episodes like today. If you'd like to catch audio replays of the show, just Google Talking into Infinity Podcast. Let me bring on my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brian Hendrickson. Dude, what is up? This is going to be an absolute blast.
I'm excited. I don't know how much of a voice I have. I was yelling for 4 hours at the TV watching Ohio State Notre Dame, as were you. So hopefully I have enough left of my vocal cords, and thank God we got a win, because otherwise this would be a great topic, but I would be super annoyed today. So right. I'm not annoyed. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I missed the first episode where Rich Wilson was on. I finally got to listen to the whole thing, and very insightful guy and some great stories, and seems to be a huge Dream Theater fan, which is a bonus. So this should be fun.
You would hope he's a big Dream Theater fan. He wrote a whole book about him.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Some people only do stuff for money, so.
Yeah, Rich is a shill.
Yeah,
he'll tell us about that, I'm sure. But
the zillions made from this.
Yeah, no, I actually, like, full disclosure, the interview that I did with Rich is one of my favorite episodes that we've done, because it was a total blast, and you know, we've talked about the book so much on the show, and I absolutely love that book, and it was awesome to talk to him. And then when he said he would be willing to come on again and mentioned Octavarium, I was like, hell yeah. So got in touch with him this previous week. Let's do this, man. Like, we got a long weekend here in America. I don't know if Britain celebrates Labor Day, but for us it's a long weekend, and I'm really looking forward to this. So let's bring him back onto the show. Dream Theater biographer, author, writer, Rich Wilson. What's going on, man? Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here. Welcome to the west wing of my mansion from all the money I made from the book. Yeah.
Hey, we're plugging it as much as we can here, man. We're gonna get a new wing added to that sucker.
That's good.
Oh, that is fantastic. All right, so right off the bat, like, you and I had talked after, we did our interview, and you had mentioned you would be willing to come on the show again. And when we talked a little bit, you said that you would deep dive Octavarium. Is there a particular reason why that was a record you said that you'd be interested in discussing?
It's just one of my favorite albums. I love it. Probably my top 2 or 3 Dream Theater albums. So yeah, this is one that you hadn't done, and I thought, yeah, this is a great choice, really, because there's probably not a bad track on it. I think probably with Dream Theater, I think they had a first peak, Images and Words. I think this is probably the second peak, and probably for me, they haven't actually matched this since, but obviously everyone's got a different opinion on stuff. So yeah, really love the album.
So to me, I'm interested to get yours and your thoughts and Brian's thoughts on this. To me, this was, Dream Theater always goes into their records with a plan. They're like, especially with Mike Portnoy, we're this record's going to be like this. This record's going to be like this. But to me, excuse me, this is the first record they did that was kind of like an answer to the previous one, because they had, with Train of Thought, they specifically said, oh, well, Glass Prison went over so well live, we're just going to do a heavy record. We're going to do a metal record. And it was, to that point, probably one of the, if not the poorest, one of the most poorly received records they had done. And I feel like Octavarium is a complete left turn from Train of Thought, and it's just a complete reaction to, all right, the fans didn't like the super heavy stuff, we're going to go back to this, lighthearted progs. I mean, where do you guys stand on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think I love Train of Thought. That's another great album as well. I remember seeing them on the tour, and I think the first date they did was over here near me in Manchester, and they literally played the entire album from start to finish in the first half of the set. And I thought it was great, but a lot of people didn't. But I like that album just for what it was. So it is a reaction to what went before, I suppose. It's, they're a progressive metal band, so Train of Thought's very much a metal album. So Octavarium kind of very much is in the prog camp.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like I'm on record as, when Train of Thought came out, was not a huge fan. Maybe 3 of the songs I really liked, and the rest I was really kind of, I don't know if I was confused, but in hearing historically now, hey, we wanted to make a metal full on, Pantera meets whatever, prog metal. It makes sense. But yeah, this is a definite return to form for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rich. Like, I really enjoyed Train of Thought as well. So when they kind of made this right turn, I remember when the record came out, it was starkly different to my ears, because and in re-listening to the record this week to prepare for the show, it really struck me again how there really are not very many sharp edges on this record. There are not those heavy moments. I mean, they're there occasionally, but this is, I would say, and this is terribly phrased, but I would say this is probably their lightest record. I mean, would you say that that's the case, or is there anything else you can think of in their catalog that doesn't hit hard like this one doesn't?
You could argue Falling Into Infinity, I suppose. That's quite a light record in bits. But
okay.
Yeah, probably these two are the more melodic, I suppose. Yeah. But it's it is a great album. I'm not sure how Dream Theater fans view Octavarium. I just think it is a classic, and like I said before, I don't think they've matched it since, which is probably quite a statement, really. But a lot of people disagree with it. But there's no growling vocals on it and that sort of thing, which kind of put me off a little bit on the next 2 albums I did with Portnoy. And the stuff they've done since with Mangini's, it's great, but it's not really grabbed me. I don't go back to it as often as I do with this album.
Okay. Yeah, I think Octavarium is kind of a very strange release for them, because like you said, fans don't talk about it a lot, but yet when you go back and listen to it, it is an incredible record. And I think it's a very easy listen as well, because if you get into the first 3 songs, and we'll go track by track here in a minute, but Root of All Evil, into The Answer Lies Within, into These Walls, I mean, there's not a lot of those crazy prog moments in there. They're very straightforward. You really have to get into track 4, Panic Attack, to really start getting, okay, this is Dream Theater, and then obviously the closing track. And I think it's a very easy listen as a Dream Theater album to me.
Yeah, the title track's immense, isn't it, really? Yeah, that blew me away the first time I heard it. So, I think I love that track, probably my favorite track on the album. So whether that, skews my view on it in terms of I like the other stuff as well just because of the title track, I don't know, but I still think it stands up. With maybe, there's probably one track I'm not too keen on, which is, goes back to notes quickly. The one about 9/11.
Oh yeah, Sacrifice Sons.
Sacrifice Sons. Yeah, doesn't grab me as much as other ones. So that's probably the one exception of the track I'll skip. But
okay, yeah, I've got a few thoughts on that. I'll save that for when we get to there. But yeah, that title track is just absolutely. It's funny. My wife always makes fun of me. She's not a Dream Theater fan, and she's like, "Oh yeah, And I'll be driving home from work, and I'll say, I listen to Dream Theater. I have a 40-minute commute, and she'll always say, oh, did you get through half a song? Ha, ha, ha. So I was working from home on Friday, and I was listening to the title track, and I was literally at the end of the record. It's like 2 minutes left. She walks into the kitchen, and she's like, oh, my God, you're listening to this? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a show. And she says, oh, what is it? You listen to one of those 25-minute songs? And I said, it's funny you mentioned that because it's actually 24 minutes and 56 seconds. So finally you said something that's correct about Dream Theater. So one of the things that Brian likes to do, Rich, when we do our deep dives, he takes the year the album was released and he talks about what else came out so we can kind of get like a picture of what was happening. So, Brian, what do you got from 2005?
I'll tell you what, man, this is, for my money, this is the worst of the years we've done. There's not, I mean, it's a good thing Octavarium came out because I'll be interested to see your guys. I already know John's thoughts on some of these, but I just wrote down 9 quick ones. One of John's favorite bands, Black Label Society, Mafia.
That's a great record. That I think that's my favorite Black Label record outside of the new one. I love the new one too. So
okay. John absolutely hates 9 Inch Nails. I don't know where you stand with them, Rich, but With Teeth is probably my favorite of the newer releases. And I say newer, and now we're talking, this is 17 years old. Nevermore, which is a band that played on, I believe it was this tour, the same album. So Octavarium on the
Gigantour.
Yes, Gigantour. Sorry. Thank you, John. They played a few songs from that one. Probably my favorite Nevermore album, This Godless Endeavor, came out. Disturbed, that's either, I guess, a love or hate. 10,000 Fists. I actually like that album. I know John loves this band. Bullet for My Valentine, The Poison.
That was the debut, wasn't it?
I believe so, yes.
That one I love. I love that record.
Yeah, I knew that was one of yours. Seven Dust, Next. I don't know much off of that one. That's one I kind of never really got into.
That's the first one without Clint Lowry, and there's a couple banging songs on that record. So it's okay.
Audio Slave, Out of Exile, anything Audio Slave did, I loved. I know you're not a huge Cornell fan, but and now going back, obviously at the time I knew nothing about these bands. I was not into them, but Coheed and Cambria, 4, Good Apollo, I'm Burning. I love that album now. And Trivium Ascendancy. So that's what I got. So yeah, I did not see, literally there was 3 albums when I was even looking through just, a massive list of 100 albums that came out. There's only 3 that I saw that I actually even bought that year. So
yeah, I've just had a quick scan. I think there was a Porcupine Tree album, Deadwing, that came out. It was a good album. There's the James LaBrie solo album as well, which was quite a heavy one, Elements of Persuasion. But talking of which, I saw Paul Loger's put on Facebook that he's actually started work today on the next James LaBrie solo album. So
nice.
It's pretty quick, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait to. What are your thoughts on James's most recent record? Because I was really skeptical to hear that it was going to be all acoustic, but I dig it. I really like the vibe of it, and I think the melody is just incredible. So where do you stand on A Beautiful Shade of Grey?
Yeah, it's a fantastic album. Probably my favorite solo album is done. And I may have said it last time I was on. I actually listened to that more than the last Dream Theater album. I think it's a great album. But yeah, 2005, difficult year for the bands. I think there's not a lot I can think of that's sat on the rack behind me there.
Man. I think like the early 2000s and getting later is kind of when I started. All the bands that I liked weren't really as active as they had been. So, thank God we had Octavarium, and and this is gonna be fun. So we're gonna go track by track here in a second. But now you were actually in the studio with the band for a day or something like that for this record.
Yeah, I was on vacation in New York for like 4 or 5 days. And it was about the time I was doing the interviews for the book. So I was speaking to Mike Portnoy, and he just said, "Oh, if you're in New York on that day, come on, it's going to be cool because we've got the orchestra in there, recording parts for Octavarium. So just come on up." So yeah, wandered across to the Hit Factory, wasn't it? I think in New York, and yeah, it was amazing. although I made a bit of a dick of myself because I managed to. You go up on the floor where the studio is, and there's just a lot of doors. You don't know which one to go through. So I just thought that one. Open the door and have about 20 people in an orchestra just turn and look at me. I just thought, yeah, that's isn't a good start, really. Fortunately, they weren't recording, but yeah, it was great. And then you get in there, and they're all just kind of working away, and yeah, as they were recording a lot of the orchestra parts out. I remember I sort of sat outside the control room into the live room and with the headphones on, just listening to them record it. It was unbelievable. So I only stayed about probably an hour or so, but it was just really good of them to give me that access. And it's not something I've been able to repeat since, to have that sort of experience, really.
Man, being in the studio with Dream Theater, God bless.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that's got to be like to see them actually do that stuff that up close, and the intimacy of recording a record. Like that's just awesome. So, all right, well, let's get started. Let's dig into this thing track by track. Of course, we will start with track 1. The Root of All Evil is obviously another step in the 12-step suite, which would, kind of started to get a little bit preachy, I think, but thankfully this one wasn't too bad. Brian, I know you're a big fan of this song. I love it as well. It's very straightforward. It's definitely not one of those songs that screams this is a Dream Theater record when you first put it on, because you're expecting stuff like In the Presence of Enemies or something like that, and it's 6 a.m. and this is a pretty straightforward rocker of a tune. It's got a great riff, and I think it establishes the tone for the record, which is, okay, this is Dream Theater, but we're gonna make this easy on you. You're gonna be, this is, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it's an easier listen, and you still get all the elements that you like, but it's toned down just a little bit. And again, there are no real sharp edges. I mean, it's got some heavy moments in this song, but it's not heavy per se. It's just, to me, as a Dream Theater song, it's a good, solid rock song. So, what do you think about Root of All Evil, Brian? I know you're a big fan of this song.
I did something I rarely do, which is go back and listen to what I said before, so I don't sound totally stupid. Well, it was more for, we did an episode where we ranked the Dream Theater album openers from every album. So this one's, in looking back, I think slotted in perfectly. I had this as my number 5 overall. And it's interesting what you guys are saying kind of about the style. About this album, to me, when you hear this driving, rocking, it's got that great groove to it. And then you hear what comes later, and it's like, this has nothing to do with the rest of the album whatsoever. Like, it's just really like, I guess I don't want to say it's all over the place, but stylistically, everything is kind of different. Like, you're going to start here, and then you're going to end up with what is Octavarium, and you're like, man, how did we go from this to that? And it sort of feels fine in context, but sort of looking at it from afar, you're like, wow, this really does not portend what's coming in the next few songs, and especially by the time we get to it. But yeah, just a heavy, great, grinding, tune, and like just a great set opener, if you're going to do an evening with, or if you're going to, do maybe split up a couple sets and do a best of and then an album or something. This is just a great one to start the show with.
Rich, where do you stand on Root of All Evil?
Yeah, it's almost like a transition track, isn't it, from Train of Thought into Octavarium, because you could put this track on Train of Thought fairly easily. It's heavy enough, and then after that it just kind of, like you say, lighten up a bit. And there's loads of little hidden things on this album as well when you have to start digging into it. So this album starts with the opening note of the last track on Train of Thought, so it all kind of feeds in. So yeah, I always think of it as the transition track. If you were to be listening to the entire catalogue, this kind of makes sense to go from Train of Thought to where they went on the rest of the album. Great drum riff as well. Best way, like you say, to open a show or open an album. It's just, it's a great song.
Well, you get a callback too, in the chorus, or the words, you get this dying soul. I love when bands do that. You're referencing a different song title and everything. I think it's cool when bands do those type of things.
Yeah. just a classic Dream Theater song, isn't it? Really. But yeah, probably not the highlight of the album, but still a great way to start.
I think this one's always going to have a special place in my heart, just for the sole fact that, being at Radio City for Score, and this is, sitting there, and they kind of had extended the intro a little bit before, the band started in, and it was just sitting there with that anticipation and kind of being in that venue and just going, holy shit, I'm at Radio City Music Hall and I'm watching Dream Theater. Wow. So I think there's always going to be, that little bit of sentimentality for me on this tune. So moving on to track number 2, The Answer Lies Within. Rich, what do you got?
Starts off very Pink Floyd, doesn't it, really, with the tolling bell and the bird song and that sort of thing. It's, sounds like something off the Division Bell by Pink Floyd. And yeah, it's a great DT ballad, isn't it, really? Yeah, it's just another great song in that sort of vein, really. But yeah, and I think it's a nice piano end to it as well, just to sort of provide a bit of balance. So yeah, it's up there.
It feels like this is something that almost could have been on The Astonishing. They don't do too many of these where you can probably just sit down at the piano and play a Dreams Theater song, or where the piano kind of drives it all and it's really the main force. There's a few of them, but it's almost I think I've even referenced Division Bell before, so awesome reference, Rich. Yeah, it's very Pink Floydish. You also get the foreshadowing, you get the string melody that's going to come in Octavarium, be the main, melodic motif is going to be hinted at in there, which is awesome.
Oh, look at this. We finally got some people that are able to be here live. We got our buddy Sean Faust. He says, yes, I made it. He's been trying forever to catch a live one. Our buddy Alex Neal says, ooh, this is exciting. I actually get to listen live for once. So awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. Much appreciated. Alex actually says, The Answer Lies Within reminds me of the UK band Embrace in a good way. I am not familiar with Embrace. Are you guys familiar with that band?
I could lie and say yes, but I haven't got a clue.
Come on, lie, Rich.
No idea. I have to say, I don't know.
All right, Alex, you stumped the whole show. Very nice. The Answer Lies Within to me is kind of like, it's an interesting placement for the song to me, because I remember when I first listened to the record, and the root of all evils, kind of jamming, but it wasn't, again, too heavy. And then they go immediately into a ballad. I was like, well, that's an interesting choice. And that, I think that's when I really realized, like, okay, this is going to be kind of a different experience, because it's not something that they would typically do. I think, the albums generally kind of start out like, they kind of punch you in the teeth for a bit, and then they go into the slow stuff. But this is pretty much like, here's the ballad on the record, like right off the rip. So I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So, and again, it's a little bit more simplistic. It is one of their better ballads, Rich, to your point. And I just think it's, it kind of like the rest of the record, the melodies stand out above pretty much everything else. Like, this is one of those records for them where the crazy musicianship is there, but I think the melodies are really front and center on this one. And I think The Answer Lies Within is a perfect example of that. And it's a really pretty song. It's just, nice to listen to, and like you said, it kind of starts out Pink Floyd-ish, and you've got the bird song and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely it's a great song. And I will say, though, I was like, okay, when are we going to get that Dream Theater moment? And it hadn't hit yet, and it still doesn't kind of hit on track 3, These Walls, which to me is one of the most underrated Dream Theater songs. I absolutely love These Walls, and I think that song doesn't get played enough. I don't think it gets talked about enough. I think what gets me about These Walls is the chorus, because it's almost like there's chord, hold out a chord, hold out a chord. It's just like, okay, and they have this giant soaring melody over top. Again, going back to the melody, and it's a very simplistic way of writing for them, which I really like. And Petrucci is using the 7-string. I keep going back to this word, so I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but melodically, like a lot of guys, when they jump into the 7-string, you know how it is. You pull that out when you want to do something heavy, and you want to do something like The Mirror or Lie or something like that. But I love when guys use it as a tool to just kind of expand the sonic range. And I think this song is a perfect example of that. And I just love how John Petrucci uses that 7-string on this song. I just think it's great. Robert Husted, good to see you, man. He says, agree with you, John. These Walls is so underrated. What do you think about These Walls, Rich? I love this song. I don't know where you stand on it.
Yeah, it is. It is probably a typical Dream Theater song for me. Like you say, possibly the first moment on the album where you sort of grabbed and think, yeah, this is classic Dream Theater, but it is still very proggy, with the keys and that. But yeah, it fits in well. And the other thing as well about this album, I suppose, is that each of the tracks is in an ascending key, isn't it? I think so. They do an entire octave of it. So there's so many little things to dig into. Strange way that there's a lot of thought gone into it, which probably is Mike Portnoy again, just coming up with these Easter eggs for people to find. But yeah, this is another. It's a great song. Leads into, and I suppose the next one is "I Walk Beside You," isn't it? Which is kind of another melodic song, which probably should have been a single, but yeah.
I completely forgot to mention that at the outset. That they wrote this record as an octave, and the whole 8 thing is kind of throughout the record. I mean, the Newton's Cradle on the album cover and stuff like that. One of the things that you kind of teased me on this one, I forgot to bring this up, Rich, is that Mike Portnoy has this tendency on some of the songs, like the simpler stuff, to really, and I love when he does this. It's like it'll be the guitars and the bass and the keys will be really kind of straight ahead, kind of simple, and he's doing all this busy little stuff to kind of keep it moving. And this is another example, because they're doing the broken chords in the verse, like doom 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 doom, and it's nice. But Portnoy, it's like he's doing all the cymbal play and stuff, and I love that, because even though it's a simplistic listen in terms of guitar, the instrumentation, your ears going, ooh, what is that? It like really keeps you engaged, in a very interesting way. So I mean, do you hear that too, Brian? Or
yeah, I'll touch on the guitar in a second, but it's rare we get 2 out of 3 songs on a Dream Theater album where Jordan drives the song, because this whole song is driven by that power synth riff, which, me being a keyboard player, I'm always all for that. So those are my favorite type of songs, and and it's easy to say, oh, we could just have a guitar play that, but it makes sense that that synth drives that, and then you get into the verse, and this is kind of my new favorite sort of guitar style from almost any band. It's kind of that echoey, atmospheric, thing. And I think you said kind of more basic, but to me, it's just very atmospheric. And I love when those kind of notes just ring out over just like a lush melody like that. And that's what the guitar is doing there. So it's counterbalancing that super heavy synth riff that's going on, that drives it sort of at the beginning there. And it's just a great, we're 3 songs in, and we've got kind of 3 different styles, but it doesn't feel discombobulated at all to me, which is always really hard to do, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's, again, going, beating my dead horse here. It's an easier listen as a Dream Theater record. It's, Train of Thought was heavy and challenging and, grating, and this is not that at all. It's like the counterpoint to Train of Thought,
I think I was just digging on my phone there, trying to find an email from a guy called Scott Hansen, who knows everything about Dream Theater you could possibly want to know. And he flagged an interview to me a few months ago where I think he was suggesting that the original plan for Octavarium was to make it an album of shorter songs. And obviously, once the title track was written, that kind of blew that out the water. But yeah, so I just a lot of thought goes into it, and I think, like you say, Mike's playing on this is interesting, and there's always stuff layered or hidden away for you to find out. I think that's really because he was a fan of the band. He always looked at it in terms of what would a fan find cool to listen out for or to pick up on. And I think that's why there are so many things, hidden away on particularly this album. I don't think you've really had that since, but
yeah, that's a really good point, Rich, because I'm trying to think. I obviously, with Mike, they only did 2 more records, and it really, this is probably the last time they really sat down and had this big plan of attack. What would they say about Systematic Chaos? Like, it just has to have chunk and balls, and then Black Clouds was whatever it was. But yeah, that's a really good point, Rich. I mean, this is because they were kind of famous for that kind of thing. Awake was let's try, let's get heavier and try and recreate the success of Pull Me Under, and then Falling Into Infinity was okay. We really got to get Pull Me Under, so let's simplify things and try and write a radio single, 7 times over, 8 times over, whatever. And yeah, this is really the last time they really did that. That's a very good point.
I think it's the other thing. I think this is probably why it's such a special album, because it was written. I wrote the book at the same time. I thought the album was fantastic, and then they go out on tour, and it was, amazing to see them play Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety. That's fantastic, and they don't do that anymore. And it's almost as though they've kind of become every other band in that sense, in terms of there was always special gigs or unusual things happening, whereas now they've just they've just done what every other band does, probably play the same set every night, and which is fine, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of work, isn't it, to try and do these things. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss that. Particularly being a prog fan as well, that tour was sensational, really.
I mean, the audacity to just say, we're going to go out and play Dark Side.
Yeah,
I mean, it'd be like, okay, we'll do it. I mean, that's always kind of blown. I mean, I know they did it with Master Puppets and a number of the Beasts and stuff, and those are still impressive. But yeah, we're going to do Dark Side of the Moon front to back.
But they do it so well as well. They actually managed to get hold of the original screen projections that Pink Floyd used, off some wherever they got that from. I don't know. I can't remember if the backing singer was the same singer who originally did the vocals on the album. The saxophonist came on, who was the same guy. It was just, they just did everything right, really. It was amazing. Just a lot of effort, to give to the fans, really. Which probably leads them to Never Enough, but that's another few tracks down, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't wait to get into that one. I think you go to the same place. But yeah, you had brought up Walk Beside You as the next track, a minute ago. And yeah, it's interesting that this was not released as the single for the record, because I agree with you. This is definitely the poppiest moment on the album, and I love it. It's upbeat and it's happy. It's a fun listen. It's it's a great song. It's uplifting, and you're like, all right, cool, And I liked how they did it. For that tour, when they opened with The Root of All Evil and then went right into, Walk Beside You, it was like, you're already jazzed up from being at a Dream Theater show, and then obviously you're going to get the album opener, you always do, and then they go right into that while you're up, and it's just now you're even more up. It's kind of like, oh, you're in a good mood? Watch this. We're going to put you in an even better mood. Like, so yeah. I always thought that was kind of cool. It's one of their more straightforward lyrics. But I don't think it ventures into being cheesy. I know it's been accused of that occasionally, but I don't really hear that. I just think it's a good message, and it's not like the age old don't ever do this rhyming strife with life. Like, it's not anything like that. But yeah, I don't have much to say on the song because I just really like it. It's a fun listen, and it's just a fun song to listen to. I really enjoy this one. What do you guys think?
I think it's saved by the pre-chorus before you get to the chorus. That higher party sings there, and it's you got a little bit of harmonic tension on that note. I think that really helps because otherwise it's a little too singly for me. But I really love that little pre-chorus part. And you guys are throwing around some names, and Alex Neal makes a great point. He says, this album was actually my entry point to DT. My friend said this is a combo of Muse, Pink Floyd, Yes, and Metallica. And yeah, I think even in your book, Rich, you referenced most of those bands. And there's definitely a Muse, vibe going on in the way that James sings a lot of the songs.
Yeah, particularly on Panic Attack. That's very Muse sounding. And there's a few vocal effects on Never Enough as well. But so yeah, it does sound. Yeah, they did try to. They were influenced by other people all the way through the career. Really, I think certainly this time Muse are flying high, and you can tell it's kind of seeped into a couple of the tracks.
Yeah, man, I never thought about the Muse comparison, and now I'm like, yeah, that really is kind of in there. Like, this is why I have you guys on the show, because I'm the moron. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't think of these intelligent things. I'm just like, oh, that's a good song. So,
but you can see that's James' kind of more almost natural theatrical way of singing too. So I'm curious, like, I don't know if he was actually influenced by that guy's voice. I'm gonna say no, but I could be totally wrong. But that feels like a very natural way of singing for him too, because like I said, he does have that sort of a theatrical side to him.
Yeah, it sounds perfectly natural. It sounds like some of the stuff he might have sung on, scenes. So yeah, it's natural for him. I don't think you'd ever get him trying to imitate anyone really, unless someone tried to make him do the growling vocals, which I can't stand. But yeah.
So that's why you didn't want to do Systematic Chaos or Black Clouds.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. Yeah. Speaking of interesting vocals on James's behalf, that takes us to track number 5, Panic Attack, where he definitely has some warbly stuff. I kind of think of it as in the middle there, that helpless stereo, like, it's kind of a quick vibrato for him, and I really like that. This is one of those songs that is, I think of this one, and I think of Constant Motion, that is like a total package, that the song title matches the vibe of the actual music, and the lyrics actually match all of it. It just blends together, and it's Panic Attack, it's moving and it's going all over the place, and then, like I said, the warbly vocal kind of keeps the tension there, and I love that about this song. This is one of, again, to me, a very unheralded Dream Theater song, and this song is just one of those ones. It's 8 minutes, but Brian and I have talked on the show about how there's a lot of Dream Theater songs that are way longer than you realize, because it's such a good song, and you're into it, and it's over. You're like, oh, that was a great 4 or 5 minutes. You look down, it's actually a 9-minute, 10-minute song, and I think this is a perfect example of that, because it's over 8 minutes long. And it's always doing something. You're just like, ooh, what was that? Ooh, what was that? And there's all kinds of craziness going on, and I love it. It's just, this is the first time, I think, on the record you get that, okay, I'm listening to a Dream Theater album. I think this is the most Dream Theater-ish moment we've had on this record so far, and to me, it might be the most Dream Theater moment outside of the title track, personally. So I really dig it. I kind of like. I talked about the sequencing, how it's interesting that they put, The Answer Lies Within as track 2, but I kind of like that they went with 4 more kind of straight ahead songs, and then kind of like smacked you and went, hey, it's Dream Theater with Panic Attack. So I really, really like that.
Do they? How often? I mean, you guys probably know more than me. I mean, I've probably not seen the band live for about 5 or 6 years. Do they still bring this one out and play it live?
They have not played this in a while. I've seen all my first tour I saw was Scenes from Memory. I have not missed a tour since, and I know I haven't seen this one with Mangini when I've seen them. So it's definitely not. I mean, this whole record is one they don't really revisit. I know they did these walls on the Dramatic Turn tour here and there, but other than that,
Yeah, sounds interesting too, because there's a whole separate, like, I don't want to say generation, but population of people that know this from the Guitar Hero thing. Like this is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. I was never like huge into that, but I remember people talking about it, and I just did Google just to double check on that. So, but yeah, this is just like a big molten slab of prog is like kind of what I call it, like I love that the bridge piano thing with the choir behind it, the down, that
Yeah.
those are the things that we always talk in Dream Theater, like those just soaring epic, sound film score soundtrack kind of bits just thrown in there. And it's real, it's real short. It's not a super long section where they do that, but yeah, and then the guitar, at the end, it's just, I mean, I love all the guitar parts in this song. It's just relentless, I mean, it sounds like someone literally having a panic attack. So like you said, Rich, it's like appropriately titled.
So Hennig Milky, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. He says this was the last album under their Warner Music Elektra contract, I believe, right? Next one is Roadrunner. Yes. If my memory serves, yeah, Systematic Chaos was the first one on Roadrunner. Sean Faust, our good friend, he says, last time I saw this live was when they opened for Iron Maiden. God, when was that? Sean, what tour was that? Let us know. I can't remember which tour that was. JG3 says, Panic Attack would be a great song to bring out because it's fairly straightforward to sing, and it would help out Labrie. Yeah, there's really not a lot of really difficult stuff on this song, I would say. So that's a good take. Yeah, this is a great song, man, and I'm a huge fan of Panic Attack. And of course, after Panic Attack, we get into Never Enough, which I think it's got a great keyboard moment, and I absolutely love the lyric. It's Mike Portnoy just pissing on people. I've always loved that. He's like, you guys are dicks. I do everything for you, and it's screw you.
Yeah, it's right, isn't it? I think Dream Theater fans are great, but I think you have such a loyal fan base that just explore everything that the band do, and because they care so much about the band, everyone has strong opinions, which is why it comes out in forums. Marillion are another example of that, where their fans are very vocal and vociferous and critical when there's no real need to be. But yeah, he was right, really, because like you say, you would do all these special things for the fans, and a lot of the time it wasn't really appreciated, probably by 99% of people. But there's always the people who just like to sit behind the keyboard, have a go, and if you were to meet them in the street, I'm sure they'd be perfectly civil to Mike Portnoy, but it's just that keyboard warrior thing, isn't it? So yeah, but probably pissed them off even more, didn't that, I guess? But
right. Yeah, you make an excellent point about that. It's because I mean, you talked earlier about the special shows that they would do, and and I mean, to your point, I saw them on back-to-back nights. I saw them on a Friday and a Saturday on the subsequent tour on Systematic Chaos, and it was I'm pretty sure it was still an evening. I don't remember if it was an evening with at that point, but they played a long show as Dream Theater always does. And between the two nights, there were only 3 common songs, and they played at least like 12 to 15 tunes. So Mike was always doing that. He's like, and he's, I mean, this because you interviewed him, so I'm sure this came up. He knew, like, I saw him in Cleveland and Columbus. It's a 2-hour drive. And he knew that there would be fans like me that would make the 2-hour drive to see 2 shows in a row. And to his thinking, it was, well, let's give him something different. This guy that's driving 2 hours, let's give him a whole different show. And, like you said, the Dark Side of the Moon thing. And then, for the 6 Degrees tour was Master of Puppets. I almost made it to that show. And, we tried to do both nights because of that reason. It was, they were doing Master of Puppets. And the fact that there are those fans that would give Portnoy any shit was always unbelievable to me. I'm like, no band does this.
Mhm.
I mean, you get so much content all of the time. What complaint could you possibly have? And I'm sure I'm a little biased being a Dream Theater fan, but also being a Van Halen fan. Van Halen's the opposite. You never got shit from Van Halen ever. So,
Yeah.
so I guess maybe I was maybe filtering it through that lens, but yeah, I loved the lyrics of this. You know, when I found out what it was about, I'm like, good for you. Give the people the finger. Like, if you're not happy, fine. Then I'm gonna write a song about you. Take that, you asshole.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the 2 night thing was whenever they played 2 nights in a city, you always knew the second night was going to be a cover album night. And I remember when the tickets for London went on sale, and I went straight for the second night because I knew it was something special, you know. So it's a shame they've stopped doing it, really is. But I can understand why. It's a lot of work.
Oh, it's a lot easier, and especially now that they have they've got some tracks. They're enhancing the vocals with some more harmonies and stuff to kind of fill out the sound a little bit. They're kind of unfortunately a slave to that, because if you're working off a track, there's no room for that improvisation. Which I think that's the only thing that I really miss is prior tours, you would have those moments where they would just kind of go off and start just feeling it and riffing off stuff, and you don't really get that a lot now that they're beholden to these tracks and clicks and stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole click track and how can I put it? Vocal assistance on tape, I suppose, is it's a tricky one, isn't it? How far do you go with it, and where do you draw the line? I think the problem is every band's doing it. So if you don't do it, you're going to suck compared to Def Leppard or someone, So I think they have to do it to sort of, add. No one's getting any younger, are they? Particularly on the vocal side. So yeah, it's. But like you say, when you're playing to a click, it does kind of steer what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've never been a great fan of having, live assistance, really.
Yeah, Brian and I are both. We both play, and my band uses tracks, but it's for stuff like pop tunes when you've got like a horn section or keys.
Yeah.
But we've got 2 guitars, bass player, drummer, singer, and bass player and guitar player sing. So we've got 3-part live harmonies and stuff. So to me, if you're using it just to like kind of like flavor things, it like the way that Dream Theater does it, I don't really have a problem with, because James is still he's still singing it live. Yeah, and it's and he's the stuff that's on the track is just the vocal harmonies. So I don't mind it. And also with a band like Dream Theater, they can play. So it's not like Motley Crue when they're piping stuff in and they suck. It's like you're not like okay, they have to have this crap because they suck.
Yeah.
Dream Theater does not suck.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really get me that much, I think. And again, and to your point, James is getting older and stuff, and it's getting more difficult to sing. But the backing vocals are obviously auto-tuned. They're perfectly in pitch with the instrumentation, and it's not like he's out of key with it. So it still sounds like it should sound, and it's not and honestly, a lot of fans probably don't notice a lot. The average fan that's not used to listening to stuff, like the way that you and Brian and I are, they probably don't notice. So to me, it's not a big deal. What do you think, Brian? Because I mean,
stuff like Nightmare to Remember and even like Octavarium, like there's no way they can play those without a clip, because Jordan's playing multiple parts as it is. There's tons of sound effects and things that go into it, and also most of the 90%.
Hey, Brian.
Vocals.
Brian, you're really like robotic. So why don't you reset your internet real quick? I'll drop you out, and Rich and I'll keep going. So just jump back in, because you've been frozen for a bit. So
all right,
go and reboot and jump back in. Oh, thank God, Rich. All right, now we can really get down to business. He's gone.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't like the track thing, but as long as it's just for flavoring.
Yeah.
then I don't mind it. JG3, he says, in my opinion, the backing tracks this past tour were a bit much. I don't know why they don't put Petrucci's mic up so it's audible and then add the backing vocal track so it sounds more realistic. Honestly, like I think that's the only thing that's funny to me, because you see John singing the stuff that you know damn well he's not singing. It's like, he's these high vocals that are not his parts, and he's up there pretending to sing. I'm like, okay, John, come on, we all know you're not singing that. So
does Mangini do backing vocals? I couldn't tell you.
I don't think so. I've never seen him with a mic, so
Am I
All right,
back,
Brian.
Is that better?
Yes, there you go. All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, no, I mean, most of those songs they're gonna need a click, and James does all of the backing vocals on the album, so there's no way he can sing the backing vocals and the lead at the same time, right? And Petrucci might be a solid background singer, but that's not why, that's not his forte. Nobody in that band, has a massive forte for vocals. It's not built around that. So I don't know any way to get, especially stuff that does have big backing vocals, other than to probably track it if you want it to sound like the album, right?
Yeah.
I suppose Portnoy used to do a lot of the backing vocals, didn't he, on this sort of era?
Yeah, but that stuff was more like gang vocal chant stuff, like on Systematic Chaos stuff. I don't know how many times he would actually sing a harmony part. I could be. I mean, you saw in the making of they're in there singing and stuff, but how much of that gets mixed down and how much are they able to duplicate that live? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, moving on Octavarium, we get to Rich, you mentioned this song earlier, Sacrificed Sons, and I'll let you guys speak to this. My first initial thought, though, when I heard this, I was like, this is a 9/11 song? I mean, it's 4 years gone by now at this point. Is this poorly timed? Like, because they had an opportunity to do a 9/11 song previously, and 2 records worth, and all of a sudden now they're doing it. So it was interesting to me that they chose to do it 4 years later and 3 albums later. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, and end of the day, I'm not an American, so my opinion probably isn't really as valid as you two guys. But it didn't sit comfortably with me. I mean, Tony Kaye, the Yes keyboard player, he released the 9/11 album 2 years ago, and that's still a bit mawkish and to me. I don't even now. I find it a bit much. So, yeah. I mean, musically it stands up, but whether the subject matter was a little bit too raw for 4 years down the line, that's the way I've always felt about it, and it's not a track I listen to very much, just for that reason, really.
Yeah, for me, I understand it, and as you said, like you're not an American, so I mean, 9/11 is a huge deal for us, obviously, but to me, when I think about, okay, it's been 4 years, like, are we going to do another one of these? I also then remember, well, these guys are New Yorkers. So like when you say, oh, well, I'm not, I'm not from America, I don't get it. Well, for us, it's also, we're not New Yorkers, so we don't get that. It's almost like the same thing. So, for them, it was probably, and I know it was still fresh because I actually visited Ground Zero in March of 2003, and it was completely cleaned out and everything, just 2 holes in the ground. And it was ungodly powerful, one of the most powerful experiences of my life to see this. And so, if that's your hometown, I'm sure for them, it was probably still pretty fresh. So, subject matter notwithstanding, where do you guys stand on this song? Because I'm with you, Rich. Like, I never really go back to this one. I think this is one of the, we talked earlier about Panic Attack being one of the kind of longer songs that doesn't feel like it. I think Sacrifice Sons is one of the longer songs that kind of does feel like it. Like, I enjoy it, but it not much happens. There's not that, the best part of the song to me is that bass line, that almost, I don't know how to describe it. It almost sounds like if John Mayer was drunk, it's a slippery and almost seems like he's missing every other note. But I know that that's how it's written. But it's so unique, and I love that. But there's not a lot of that to this song. So, what are your guys' thoughts on this song musically?
I think it's, yeah, I guess I get what you're saying. I think it's a good point about, like, okay, they're from New York, so you walk down the street and there's probably 13 reminders, every 6 blocks or something of that magnitude, and as very well there should be. And also they had that experience with, the original album cover for what, 6 Degrees or whatever was supposed to have the 2 towers burning and all this and that, and they were trying to excuse me, make up for that, I guess, or somehow address that or say how they were feeling about that. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this song is okay. It's, like you said, I think it's one of those that does feel long. It starts out kind of as a spacey ballad, then it gets heavier as you go through it. Gets kind of angrier, obviously, towards the end. And it's obviously, an angry sort of a protest song, obviously about, killing in the name of religion and all this, that sort of thing. Was it ever officially confirmed that this was about 9/11, or was this just about that stuff in general?
No, it was a 9/11 thing. The news clips at the beginning were from like broadcasts of,
Oh, well, duh.
So
Okay.
yeah. No, it's look at this. We got a new viewer. This is great. Adrian Schaller, you picked a great day to tune in because we got Rich Wilson with us, so one of our awesome special guests. So hey guys, recently discovered the podcast. First time tuning in live. Love hearing anything about Dream Theater, so keep it up. So yeah, not only do you have us, you got Dream Theater's biographer. So you picked a damn good day to tune into the show. Yeah, back to your point, Brian. It was definitely a 9/11 song. So,
It was. I mean, for the band, it's obviously, like you say, they are from New York, so I certainly wasn't implying they've no right to write about it. And obviously, not being American, I understand the feeling because it hit everyone around the world. But so it's difficult for me to pass comment on it. But it was something that I know came, very close to home. I think, if I remember rightly, Kevin Moore's brother was a fireman, and he was down there on that day. I think he was okay. Thank God. And
wow.
So yeah, I think it's probably everyone knew somebody or a friend of a friend who was closely involved in it. So yeah, clearly it's something that's on the mind. It's just a case of when they were ready to write about it, I suppose. But
yeah, that's a good point. I did not know that about Kevin Moore's brother being down there. That's man.
I think it feels like out of place, I guess, and I'm not saying that. That's just my own feeling. It feels out of place on this album. It doesn't fit with the rest of it to me.
In what way? Are you talking about like the vibe of the song, the subject, like
I think just the subject matter,
okay.
to go to something like that, like kind of like to Rich's point, like, I'm not saying something you get over, it's before everyone jumps on you.
Yeah. 9/11, just get over it, dude.
Yeah. No,
Sure.
but I mean, it feels out of place lyrically and I mean musically. There's a lot of elements they go to a lot, those Middle Eastern type of riffs and stuff that they do, which are heavy and always sound pretty cool. But I think it's out of place just in general, especially lyrically.
Well, Alex Neal, to your that's one I wanted to bring up too. Our buddy Sean Faust, we're gonna pimp out your book a little bit here, Rich. He says, Adrian, if you haven't read Rich's book, do it. Yeah, to anybody watching or listening, if you have not gotten a copy of Lifting Shadows, you absolutely have to. It is, and not just because Rich is on the show, but if you've listened to Brian and I at any point during the history of us doing the show, we love the book. It's fantastic. So go grab a copy of that. It's on Amazon. It's absolutely fantastic. So check that out. And to your point, Brian, Alex Neal says, is it possible that their decision to cover the subject might have been influenced by that unfortunate album cover coincidence? So yeah, Alex is seeing the same thing that you're seeing. So, Adrian's got your book. There we go, Rich. He says, thanks for the shout out. Welcome, Rich. I have the book and need to sit down long enough to give it a read. I also love Sacrifice Sons.
Thank you. Rich, when you see a comment like that, does that sometimes make you mad? I have your book. I just haven't read it.
It's fine. No, I was said before, he's bought the book. It's helped pay for the West Wing of the house, so it's all good.
That's true. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as they buy it, right?
Yeah, Rich has got his $20. He's like, you do whatever you want with it, man. I got your $20. Sweet.
Full disclosure, for every album or for every book that Rich sells off this podcast, we get absolutely, let's see, nothing. But we do want Rich to get even richer.
Slightly less than what I get. But, yeah.
Look, our buddy JG3, good to see you, by the way, man. He says, I would definitely second that. The Rich Wilson book is fantastic, well-researched, and well-written. He says, in quotes, I have your book. It's doing a great job keeping my lamp straight.
Yay!
He also says, I would disagree. Octavarium, though not a concept album, seems to deal with a lot of strong emotions on each track, and the title track wraps it all up. So I feel Sacrificed Sons does fit in with the album. Let's get into it then. I mean, let's dig into Octavarium, because Octavarium is itself, I mean, super interesting. I couldn't even tell you what the hell the subject matter is in that song.
Wow.
You know, the middle is just a string of, you know, song titles that they like, and I'll let you guys talk about it first. I would just say that when we ranked the Dream Theater epic songs, this one, if I remember, it was number 2 for me, second only to A Change of Seasons, because it's a change of seasons. I love the title track. It's the continuum thing at the beginning is over 4 minutes long, and yet you're engaged. This is a fantastic listen. So talk a little bit about this song, guys.
Yeah, there's you know, I come from a sort of progressive rock background. I'm into the metal as well, but it's always been prog for me. So there's so many influences that you can hear all the way through. It starts off, there's a Pink Floyd vibe, and then you get a bit of, you know, this flute sounds a bit like Genesis, and then they just put their own stamp onto it. The keyboard sound. I know it's mini Moog, but it's always Moog to me. So, but yeah, it's fantastic. There's a great bit of bass playing by John Mayung that sounds like Chris Squire, and like I said, the lyrics are all tie into a lot of references to progressive classics, really. There's snippets of Marillion in there, or like I say, a list of song titles as well. So, and it just goes through so many phases. So yeah, for me, it's up there. Count of Tuscany, Metropolis Part 1, and Change of Seasons. Those it's up there with, you know, it fits happily with those tracks for me.
Man, you're speaking Brian's language, bringing up the Count of Tuscany and Metropolis.
Yeah. When I went back and listened, I was like, yes. Sure. Yeah, I mean, this song, there's a lot of the talk about, you know, the medicate me and well, it's sort of a lot of, like, I don't know if it refers to drug use or the need to like, we feel like we have to feel good. So what are we going to do that? Well, put me on this. Well, now try me on that. Well, let's get me out of the, you know, I gotta do an upper to get to a downer. Like, I feel like there's some things going on there about, you know, what does it mean to feel good about ourselves and to enjoy our life and control those emotions without just having to try to artificially do it all the time, you know, which is kind of a sort of a Pink Floydish, you know, vibe for sure on some of the stuff that they've done. And I don't know what you think about that, Rich.
Yeah, it could be. I've never really thought of it like that. It's one of those. It's almost one of those tracks where the lyrics are almost second place to the music. So I've never actually worked out what it's about. You know, it just flows so well that, yeah, I probably don't pay as much attention to the lyrics as I should have done, really. But
I'm the same way. But I also, like I said, like, start to talk about it. When you think you've got an idea what it's about, then, you know, Lucy in the sky with diamonds, you're like, oh, well, that shot that out of the water. Like, what the hell are they talking about? You know, I mean,
that's the acid part there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like our buddy Sean Faust says. He says, "Is Octavarium the song where they just show off how good they are at noodling senselessly?" Like, it's definitely a noodle fest. I mean, I don't know if it's senselessly, but, you know, I said, like, I agreed with him. I said, yeah, they're definitely showing it off, and I this is kind of like a showcase song, I think. And to your point, Rich, I think, yeah, the lyrics and the, you know, the subject matter are kind of secondary to hey, check out all this cool shit we can do.
Yeah.
Oh, look at Sean walking him. He says, dude, I was kidding. No, don't you walk it back. Come on. Own up. You put it out in the internet, Sean. You know what happens. Anything that happens on the internet stays on the internet, so you're stuck. But, yeah, this song is just awesome. And again, I've said this previously on the show. Again, I think this is another one that I have a sentimental attachment to from having seen it at, at Radio City, being at Score. And man, oh man, again, the only long form song that I put ahead of it was The Change of Seasons, again, because it's Change of Seasons. But this song, it is incredibly long, and it's just, going back to one of the original points I made about this whole record, it's an easy listen. You're not sitting there like looking at your watch going, oh my God, has it really been 17 minutes? Like, you're just into it. You're like, oh, this is cool. Because right at the point where you think it might start to drag, they change it. They go into some different section and, all these different, time signature changes and all this stuff. And God, this is just a great song. And
so it was killing me. I had to look this up because there's the part where they keep saying trapped inside an octavarium.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you guys know this. An octavarium is a perfect sphere colliding with our fate. That's the definition.
Where the hell did you find that?
I just looked it up. So it's everything ends, and also goes on the theme. Everything ends where it begins.
Oh, that makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, because that always bothered me. Like, what do you mean you're trapped inside an octavarium? It's. I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, we're sort of like doomed to repeat ourselves, right? We're trapped in this thing of, is this really truly our fate? Can we control our fate? It always comes back to some of those things lyrically, I think, on a lot of Dream Theater songs, especially when it comes to the idea of fate and just what does it mean to even live, and how do we escape this, and how do we actually deal with this? What artificial things do we do? Can you ever escape it, right? Because that's the whole idea, I guess, is when you get to the end, we're trapped inside this thing.
Yeah, and the ending of that track either feeds in with the beginning of Octavarium or the beginning of the album. I can't quite remember which it's almost reminiscent of The Wall, because on The Wall you've got Roger Waters saying, isn't this where we came in? And you could play it on a loop forever. In fact, in the mix on Octavarium, there is actually that phrase of, isn't this where we came in? It's hidden quite well down the mix. I don't know if it's actually Roger Waters that just lifted it, or if one of the guys has done it, so that just feeds in with it as well. There's actually, someone's put an instrumental version of this song up on YouTube. It's the Dream Theater version just with no vocals, and you can actually pick up a lot of sort of things that are hidden in the mix that you can't normally hear on the finished album, so that's worth a listen as well.
Man, I love hearing this. I did not know that. Like, the hidden stuff in the Roger Waters and all that. I'm glad that you brought up that definition, Brian. Like, as much as I joke about being an idiot, like I like that kind of thing, and it really makes sense, because I think that, we talked about earlier, Rich, the whole album is an octave, and it does, it ends where it started. So I guess that, the album title is absolutely perfect and well thought out. And I feel stupid even saying that, but yeah, it's okay. It's an octavarium, like, so, but the record itself is this concept, like that. Wow. That's cool. I always wonder about this, like, and Rich, you've interviewed a ton of, obviously, for, the magazine, you've interviewed all these, progressive musicians, and they're all pretty universally really intelligent people. I always wonder, and I don't know if this has ever been brought up in any of your interviews or if they've mentioned anything like this to you, but, to put this much effort into something, like, mentally, I mean, it's difficult enough to just sit down and let's try and write a good song, much less, okay, well, we're going to call this Octavarium because an Octavarium is this. So the first song has to be in the same key as the last song, but it's going to be an octave in, but like, has that ever come up in any of your interviews? Like, the effort that has to go into it I have to think it would be tiring and a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, but most bands aren't Dream Theater, and at that time, Mike Portnoy was just obsessive about detail and making sure everything's right. So yeah, maybe Pink Floyd would put that amount of detail into something in terms of a concept, possibly Marillion, but not quite to the same extent. But yeah, I mean, the level of detail and the number of those sort of hidden Easter eggs, particularly on this album, yeah, there's so much thought that's gone into it, that yeah, there's not many other bands do that.
It's just so fascinating to me. Like having written music myself, I've never. I'll just sit down with a guitar and be like, all right, just start playing. Like, oh, this is a cool riff. I'm gonna start feeding off of that. It's not okay. Getting all existential. What are the lyrics gonna be like? What Easter eggs can I put in here? It's fascinating. And you've said it a couple times. The show, like the little things that you can find, on this record. But it really, you could say that about the rest of the records. They always have those little nuggets in there, and it's what makes them such a such a fantastic, interesting, band. The listen goes beyond just, oh, this is a kick-ass record. Like you're kind of like, it's like an Easter egg hunt here and there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mentioned before the score concert. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but looking back in a historical sort of context that we can do now, I think that was a peak for the band, really. I'm not saying they've dropped off massively after that, but I just think in terms of the material on this album, the live presentation, everyone's ability, James's voice was sensational. It almost, that sort of time frame seems to me to be like, a bit of a creative and live peak for them, because certainly the next two albums that came afterwards didn't grab me as much as this one.
Well, you use the word determined, I think, a few times, Rich. We're talking about Portnoy, and we've talked about this before, like drive. Does drive trump talent? And then when you're Portnoy, you have drive and talent. This is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that you get. Like, I think, like you said, like when he's driven to do something, this is the end result, right? And maybe that element is not quite as much there, although the astonishing was all Petrucci, right? So there was obviously some drive and determination there on something of that nature.
Yeah, I think the astonishing for me, I'm going to get panned for this, is it's an album that you can applaud, but you can't necessarily enjoy for me. But I know it's an hugely divisive album. Some people love it, and I'm kind of in the other camp. It was astonishing in a number of ways, not all of them good for me. So,
well,
but yeah. So, what about you, John? Do you hate it or love it?
I love the astonishing.
Okay.
I think it's the most Dream Theater thing they could possibly do, especially at that time. It's 2017. People's attention spans are shorter than ever, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna put out a 2.5 hour double concept record, and I'm like, that's Dream Theater, and yet the songs are all like 2, 3, 4 minutes long, so they give it to you in these tiny snippets. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm a big fan of concept records, but again, I think it was the most Dream Theater thing they could have done, and I thought it was great.
The best thing about the astonishing is when you tell somebody if you love it or if you hate it, you're totally wrong among Dream Theater fans. You're completely wrong. Like, because nobody will just be like, it's okay. There's never going to be that guy. So you're going to be wrong one way or the other. It doesn't matter.
But that's the great thing about, bands like this, the creativity, it's, it is all subjective as to whether you love it or hate it. I mean, Brian, you're a Rush fan, aren't you, from memory?
Yes.
If I was to tell you what my favorite Rush album was, you would cut me off. So,
all right, wait a minute. We got to do this then. Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
No, I can't. You will. I just love Hold Your Fire. Sorry.
I actually don't. I don't mind that. I like Hold Your Fire too. So
good.
I absolutely hated the last two albums though. R.I.P. Neil, but I just did not. I did not understand what was going on there. But
that's what Clockwork Angels and Snakes and Arrows.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't. I didn't get it, but hey, that's okay. No, hold your fire. I can see why you would get a lot of hate for that, though. I could definitely.
Yeah, huge amount.
Yeah,
Well,
the end of the trio of like heavily, heavy keyboard albums there.
Sean Faust agrees with you guys. Hold Your Fire and Power Windows are awesome. So yeah, I'm not familiar, so that's I'm just now dipping my toes into the Rush waters, but
it just reminded me to talk about the Astonishing, because I always thought again, you've looked at this more than myself, but lyrically, the Astonishing always kind of reminded me of a mix of 2112 and Star Wars, and that's what put me off. I could be completely wrong. I might be completely missing the story on it, but that's always been my take on it, really.
Now,
No,
is it the Star Wars? Is it the Star Wars part that put you off?
Just
say yes. Yes.
Yes.
See, now you're gonna get kicked off, Rich. You can't come onto this show with a guy with Star Wars tattooed on his forearms. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm not too familiar with the story of 2112, but obviously Star Wars I am, and I got the exact same vibe. I was like, this is very Star Wars-ish, which, of course, maybe that's why I love it, again, because I'm like, ooh, it's kind of Star Wars-y. Like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so.
Yeah, the 2112 thing is it's kind of the paradox of 2112 as well. Music, they just completely abolished it. You couldn't have it whatsoever. It was like outlawed, borderline. And then with the Astonishing, it's like, okay, well, we have machines that can make music, but nobody else can, right? And this is what it sounds like, and it has to sound like this exactly, and otherwise we can't have it. I think it's kind of sort of a general theme of it. But I thought it was heavily 2112 influenced.
Well, I also think with the Astonishing, one of the things that I like is, going back to, Never Enough on Octavarium, where, Portnoy lyrically is pissing on people that are bitching about, oh, you don't, give us more. The Astonishing, to me, the whole concept seemed like it was born out of John Petrucci's frustration with, the way music was going, because it's basically about, only machines make music, and it's, everything's so digital anymore, and it's like eventually is the human element going to be replaced? And it's, talking about how at the end of the day, the hero is music, live, uninterrupted, unedited, just pure music. This guy's singing voice, and that was the biggest takeaway that I had from that record, was that it was kind of Petrucci being like, the music industry sucks right now. Why can't people just get into a good song because it's a good song, and like back how it was in the day, like, so. That's what I got out of it. So I thought it was kind of cool in that respect. It's kind of
and I think it's probably unfair to say, because there was a lot of effort went into Octavarium, as we've said, in terms of detail. Well, there was a huge amount went into the Astonishing as well, because I always got the impression that maybe they were hoping it would become a stage show or something like that. But obviously that wasn't to be. And then there was a book that came out, wasn't there, which I haven't read, so that might have sort of tied in a lot with a lot of the themes on the album. But yeah, it wasn't one for me, really.
Okay. Well, back to Octavarium. Hennig Mielke says, I think it's a bit, speaking of Octavarium, I think it's a big fuck you and goodbye present to Warner and Elektra, and a big Make the Bride Beautiful album to new labels. At least that's how he sees it, That's an interesting point. And, since we were just talking about the fact that, Mike was really calculating at the time, could it be that is kind of what he did? And is that why Octavarium was a little bit more of a, return to their progressive roots, and a little more, it was simpler to listen to? I mean, could that be? I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that, but it could be. I always just felt it was a reaction to Train of Thought. That was probably the driver, but I could be wrong. I don't think that they'd fallen out with a label at that time.
Yeah.
I can't remember why they moved to Roadrunner, and then obviously Roadrunner was bought out by Warner's within a few months, so they ended up back at Warner's anyway.
The irony.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, it could be. Never thought of that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you, Rich, and I know we talked about this at the top of the show, but yeah, I completely agree that the main thing for me about Octavarium is twofold, and one of those folds, that was a horrible way to phrase it, but whatever. You know, it is a reaction to train of thought, and I think it's kind of like, they never had that previously. It was just, okay, we're just going to do a new record. Here's our concept for the new record. This was the first time they were like, okay, well, fans were kind of divided on this other record, so we're going to go back to what they like. Okay, cool. And the only other time that they did that, to me, funny that we're talking about The Astonishing, was with Distance Over Time, because you had done Dramatic Turn of Events and people were just all pissed off because Mike Portnoy wasn't in the band. Then you get the self-titled record, which I will not talk about because I'll save that for our album deep dive, but just trust me, guys, you're going to want to tune in for that because anyway. And then you get The Astonishing, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, and they go and do Distance Over Time, which is pretty much like the most vintage Dream Theater record they'd done in quite a long time. And
Yeah, I never know if it's because the fans didn't like Train of Thought. It's maybe that they felt for their own, maybe they were bored of doing a straight metal album, that they just went back to that side of things. Because I don't know how badly that album was received by fans. Is it still one that fans don't like, Train of Thought? There's still a lot of...
It's not that they don't like it. It's just it's one of the ones that people don't talk about. They don't really go back to. And I read a number of interviews, and they had said that to the band, at least this was their perception, it wasn't as well received as they had hoped. So and it's in your book, obviously. They had said we're going to go back to one of those that age old cliche, air quotes. We're going to go back to our roots.
Mm-hmm.
And they just wanted to write, they said that, Train of Thought was going to be, they wanted to write a classic metal record. Well, now Octavarium, they wanted to write a classic progressive album. So, yeah. But in terms of fan reaction, the band perceived it as not being as well received as they had hoped. So,
JG3, little known fact, Roadrunner actually forced James to grow a goatee. I did not know that. So,
really? Wow.
I'm guessing that's not true.
Come on. I mean, that was the timing, so I guess technically it could be legitimate.
It's in the contract. Take out.
All right, Rich. You did the interviews. Did James ever tell you that Roadrunner forced him to grow a goatee?
Funnily enough, no.
Wait, what?
No, I don't think so. I think it's yeah.
That's funny. You know what, though? I mean, it is Roadrunner, and they do pretty much nothing. Well, used to. They had nothing but metal bands, so maybe they're like, all right, grow a goatee, singer guy. Like, you got to fit in with our roster a little better. So yeah, final thoughts on Octavarium, guys. Where do you stand on this record? For me, when I was listening to it this week, I've always enjoyed it, but I don't revisit this one a lot. But as I was listening to it, I was going, man, this is a damn good record. Look, why don't I listen to this more? So it was really enjoyable to kind of dig back into it and kind of, in a way rediscover it, because again, it is a little bit of an easier listen. And Rich, I think you made an excellent point a few minutes ago when you said that this is almost like kind of like a creative and live peak for them. I would completely agree. I mean, anybody who watches the Score concert, James's voice is just ungodly, and I was there, so that is not doctored. He was absolutely roaring that night, and I mean this record just really, I hate to use this term, but reestablished them, I guess. Because as you said, Train of Thought, and it's six, and they're kind of going down that heavy path. But then you get this record, which is back to their prog roots. And they really, Rich beautifully said, it really was a peak for them. So I love this record. This is a great record. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this a lot more now. So I'm really glad that you wanted to dig into this, Rich, because it was fun to get back into this record.
Yeah, I think it is a good album, and it stands on its own, whereas probably a lot of the albums have made over the last 10 years are all, apart from The Astonishing, fairly similar in style. So yeah, it's much more progressive than probably most of the albums that they've done, which is why it's always appealed to me. But yeah, I think, like I said before, 1992, 93, Images and Words, creative peak. This was the second one for me, and I just don't think they've recorded anything since that's been on a par with it. They've come close. The last album was good, but it's not on the same level as this one for me.
Are you able to quantify why this one just grabs you, like more so than pretty much, I know you're a big fan of, the first two records. So are you able to quantify why this one happens to grab you the way that it does?
I think it's just the progressive stuff, because I always listen to Yes and Genesis and Marillion and those sort of bands, that it all sort of ties in with this. And I just found the title track to be phenomenal, and the rest of the album was like a nice balance to it. So yeah, and I think it's the timing as well. It's just got a special place because it was the time I was doing the book, and it was the time, I got to go to the studio, and it was the time of the Score concert, which was insane. So it's just those sort of 18-month period for me. It was just a special time, and I suppose you always appreciate albums more when you've got that emotional link to what was going on with yourself at the time. So that's why for me it's always going to be a special one.
Awesome. All right, Brian, what are your final thoughts on Octavarium? I know this record is one that you it's a little higher on your list if I remember correctly.
Yeah, new appreciation. The more every time we sort of do these deep dives, I get a different like we've talked before, we go back and listen and we hear things we didn't hear before. And, you brought up some great points about, what's the third song?
These Walls.
Yeah. Sorry. These Walls. Yeah. These Walls and Never Enough. Like kind of the more I hear those two, Panic Attack, that's a state, even though we realized they hadn't played in a while, that's sort of a staple favorite among fans, but just songs like those and I don't know, those are hitting me harder now, and I would love for this to be. I think this would make sense to. Hey, let's come out and let's play this sucker front to back. Why not? I think that would be great.
Wow, I'd be on board for that.
Yeah,
I mean, anytime they do an album front to back is cool, but yeah, you know what? That's a good point, because I think there's so much universal love for the title track. I think that people would enjoy that concert just so they could see the title track live again. It was up in the comments earlier, but somebody said, it sucks that they haven't done that song in its entirety since, the Octavarium tour. So, hopefully the guys are listening and they can throw it into the set list for us for the next.
I'd be stunned if this doesn't show up in a set list in the next 3 years or so. I think it's time to bring it back.
Yeah, it's such a big fan favorite, man. I was honestly surprised they didn't do it on the most recent tour. I mean, they're playing all these long songs. Like that's like the perfect opportunity to play this one and not play Ministry of Lost Souls. Sorry, Dream Theater guys. I'm not a Ministry of Lost Souls fan. Yeah, man, Rich, this was awesome. Thank you. If you can hang out for a second after we stop the live stream. But thank you so much for jumping on and making time for us, man. Like I said, I had a blast talking to you when we did our interview a couple months ago, and man, I was really excited when you said you'd be willing to come back on. So this was great, man. Thank you very much for making time for us.
No, thank you. I loved it. It's been great.
Well, Brian, it's been fun. So why don't we jump off? For those of you guys watching or listening, much appreciated. Adrian Schaller, JG3, Sean Faust, Cale McLeish, Alex Neal, all you guys. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. Don't forget, we are going to be live this coming Thursday, September 8th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be digging into our favorite keyboard moments of the band. And we got some really cool shows coming up. So keep it locked right here. Remember, click that like button, click that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Go Google us, download all of our stuff. We make zero money off it. And if you do nothing else, what you definitely should do is log on to Amazon right now and go buy a copy of Rich Wilson's fantastic Dream Theater biography, Lifting Shadows. Any Dream Theater fan that does not own this book, you're not allowed to call yourself a Dream Theater fan until you own the book. It's that good. So, you got to earn your fan cred. So buy that book, man. Rich's biography is fan-fucking-tastic. So, Rich, thank you very much. You're very welcome, man. Brian, good to see you. And, guys, we are going to be live on Thursday. And until that time, Carpe Diem.